Hello, today I'm going to talk about feminist practices and in the process of talking about how we can create social change from a foundation of feminist theory. I'm also going to highlight a few young women who are currently creating social change around the world. So, the first activist here that I'm highlighting is Naomi Wadler. She was 11 years old when she made a speech to the March for Our Lives rally in support of gun control. This was after the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. And Naomi spoke about how the killing of African American young women and girls was something that doesn't make big headlines. So she was including her own voice in concert with all of the other activists that were talking about gun control from the perspective of mass shootings. So, the first step in creating change, as mentioned in the essay Creating Change that we read for today, is to think about personal stories. Now, this has always been a key component of feminist activism, especially from the 1960s, early 1970s, the second wave of the feminist movement. A couple of key terms here. So, this idea of consciousness raising was a key part of activism at that time. And what this basically was groups of women talking about their experiences together, and as a result of sharing their personal stories, were able to identify issues that they had in common and think about strategies for addressing those issues. So, things that would have been kept personal and quiet were things that were talked about in public and or in groups, and as a result, they became a catalyst for action. Along with that strategy was this term, this idea, the personal is political. So, in political life and activism, oftentimes we see those things as being separate. So, there's your personal private life, and then there's political action. But a main goal of feminist activism is to root political change in personal experiences and vice versa. And so the interweaving of personal stories is a really important starting point for feminist change. Theorizing is the next step, and this is just to reiterate a couple of concepts that we have been thinking about this semester. If we understand the concept of social construction, then we realize that nothing that appears to be permanent and unchangeable is that way because it's socially constructed. If something is created through a process of human interaction, even if that has happened over many, many years, if something is man made, it can be unmade and changed. So, this idea of meaning not being fixed, instead being socially constructed, is something that's a really key important part of thinking about how to create change. And the other issue is also this concept of intersectionality. So, we've been studying this concept and thinking about how when we consider what it means to be a woman, that that identity is something that's very complicated. So there are many components to the identity of being a woman, including race, class, sexuality, etc. And so if you're going to create change and organize around a particular issue, for example, climate change, you have to pay attention to a diversity of perspectives and experiences. So you have to pay attention to those intersections. This is our second young woman activist who you may recognize, Greta Thunberg, who started a mass movement amongst young people to raise awareness around climate change. This is her on her school strike. She's in Sweden, the very first day of her school strike, which has happened basically every week in order to draw attention to climate change. The next step is vision. So there has to be a clear view or an idea of what change is going to look like. And you can't really proceed toward taking actions to make change if you are not going to envision what you want the transformed issue to look like or be like or feel like. So having a vision is really an important thing. So here I have a picture of a group of young women in Nashville who organized a mass rally around Black Lives Matter just in the last few weeks. And you can see they're just young women, an intersectional, diverse group of young women who came together and organized a mass demonstration to raise awareness about police brutality against African Americans. And then finally, strategies. What do we do to take action to work toward the vision that we hope will be the thing that creates change? So here I have an image from the quinceañera activist that we saw the MTV news clip about. So it's important to think, I think, about the kind of action that they have taken or they took against Senate Bill 4 in Texas. And once you've looked at the demonstration and seen the news story, think about those steps that we've just identified. So the action was this traditional quinceañera dance on the steps of the state capitol in Texas, and to use that as a way of drawing attention to SB4. Um, so, what do you think was the girls' vision before they started to plan this type of action? What was the component of storytelling, of personal experience that played a role in creating this action? How did the role of theory play a part? So, all of those four components are things that we see coming together in an action like the quinceañera against SB4.